Hello, and welcome to another fully live traveling episode of Hacking with Friends. My name is Kody Kilian. I am a security researcher at Varonis, and today we have my good friend and coworker and fellow hacker Kilian here to talk about the hacking news of the week and ruminate over the upcoming Black Hat conference. Kilian, how are you doing today?
Doing very well. I know you're still traveling. It was good to actually be together in person a little bit earlier this week, so that was fun. And we're going to be back together at Black Hat in what, 2 weeks, a week and a half, or something like that. Pretty soon.
It's coming up so soon. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy. I traveled all the way over, and I think the last stream that I did was at the North Carolina office, and then this
Yep.
week I am in Varonis's New York office, and I have to say it's very fancy. It's so fancy there's even a man playing a trumpet serenading me from the 20th floor. So I just want to show this off real quick to prove I'm not doing a green screen. Check it out. We are in fact in New York, very high up. But this isn't LA, so I'm not as worried about earthquakes. But yeah, it's altogether a very cool and interesting place to be. So yeah, very cool that also Varonis was the office manager here was amazing and set me up in this like very cool conference room on very short notice. So nice to be able to come check out New York and also have a place to work where this is literally like on the same block as my hotel. So it ended up being pretty nice here. So yeah,
Mhm.
I mean, there is one other place that I've been working in New York that has later hours, I would say, than the Varonis office. Killian, if you were talking to someone who wasn't really familiar with the term before, how would you describe a hacker space to them?
That's a good one. I mean, I would kind of like, in my mind, like the ideal situation is like a mad scientist workshop, but with just a whole bunch of mad scientists kind of going on. That's that's my ideal hacker space, I guess. Computers, parts, sort of laying around. A lot of people crowded around a table or computers. Um, that's it.
That's pretty much it. So I'm gonna share my screen just so you guys can see. This is where I went last night. Apologize for the X on the screen for those who didn't know about this branding change. Yuck. But here, let me just click on the picture. So this is a hackerspace called Hack Manhattan. And I guess my definition of a hackerspace is it's like a okay, this is not the official definition, but it's like a nerd embassy. It's like if you were going to go to like an embassy of just nerds and hackers and like find representatives in that area to tell you what's what, like where like who has tried what before, like what's working for them, what's not working for them. Like you can basically be guaranteed to find a bunch of really cool hackers working on cool things and generally being accepting of beginners and wanting to get you connected to the resources locally. So there are two. Yeah, someone says that they got vertigo just looking out that window. Yes, dude, me too. We're so high up. I keep looking because the North Carolina office is like 3 stories. So you look down and you're like, oh, I'd hurt my legs. Like that would be too bad if I fell. But here it's just like I'd die. Like it's
Right.
just so high up. But anyway, so there's two different hacker spaces I immediately connected with in LA. And by the way, thank you if you're on my Twitter and you gave me recommendations for where to check out in New York. I've been listening to you. And that's why I went last night, as someone suggested these. NYC Resistor is in Brooklyn, which I've been informed is far from Midtown, which I am still kind of getting around learning. So I just decided to go to Hack NYC because they both have open nights on the exact same night. So you
Mm.
really have to decide which one you want to go to. So I decided to go to the one that was literally 8 minutes away from my hotel because the barrier to entry is a lot less. So I walked there, and immediately upon coming in, I met someone who was interested in a lot of the same stuff. Like we ended up talking for like almost the whole night. I got a great tour of the space. I learned tons of stuff, and I think I'm going to come back and do some classes there. So after that, I went and got ramen with some people from the hackerspace who kind of gave me the lay of the land, like told me some things I should check out, and it was honestly like the best experience I could hope to have when going to a new place and knowing like basically no one. So not
Yeah.
only do I have this awesome office to work out of, but I also have a hacker space that I feel like is very welcoming and very cool. So if you're in New York and if you haven't checked it out already, I highly recommend the open nights, which are Thursday at 7 p.m. at Hack Manhattan. And then if you're in Brooklyn, apparently there's another open night for NYC Resistor, which I didn't get to go to, but apparently they are at exactly the same time. So
Mm.
7 o'clock Thursdays, have to recommend it because I was very pleased. And it seems like these hackerspaces are pretty organized, and a lot of the classes they do are free. So really, no reason not to check it out if you are in the area.
Very cool. Next time you're in town, I guess you'll have to just go to the other one, compare and contrast.
Yeah. So another question was, where is the one in North Carolina? So I didn't go to a hackerspace in North Carolina, although I'm pretty sure there actually are some out there, just based on the pure number of tech companies. Like I was staying in like the Research Triangle area, and that's over by like roughly by where the Voronezh office is. And I got to go in, check it out, because we did an awesome marketing event last year where we all like met there, and it was just such a pretty office that I decided I wanted to stop by and work out of that office for a couple of days on the way to this New York trip. So yeah, over by Research Triangle, you can look it up. Voronezh has a huge, beautiful office there. And it's funny because like some of the people in the local community, like they all knew about Voronezh because they're like such a big employer there. So it was kind of funny. I didn't realize that we were big in North Carolina, but apparently we are. Where's a hackerspace in North Carolina? I don't know yet. I'll let you know soon. Yeah, sorry about that. I knew what you meant. I just hadn't had enough time to really explore that area too much. All right, so next up, I just wanted to say, for one, Kilian, thank you for this, and then also thank you to all of everybody who's watching and everybody who's like contributed to our community. James, like everybody else that like pops up and really does a great job of making people feel welcome here. You got us past 50,000 subscribers. Like that's
awesome.
Incredible. And like YouTube, I know from experience that YouTube channels tend to grow more and more and more once they kind of hit this point of initial inertia and being able to get the word out when we do something really great. I know that also we're planning on doing more when it comes to, putting out lots of video content and cutting out the best parts of our live stream and making it more accessible for people who maybe don't have time to watch like a whole hour-long live stream every, twice a week. So we're really, really thankful for everybody that stuck with us through this journey. I fought so hard to keep this channel to be useful, fun, informative, like to involve people from the community. And we've gotten a great response, So I just want to just say that we have some of the best fans and we have some of the best people that help us out with this channel. And that's why it's so easy and that's why it's so fun, is because of all of you. So if you haven't joined our Discord server already, you can check it out at nugget.lol, nugget.lol. I just had that domain. I was like, it should be useful. But we have lots of great people on there that have been continuing to have great conversations, getting their questions answered, and also sharing things with the community. So thank you to everybody in our community. You have done an awesome job of kind of pushing us over the hump of getting people to notice our YouTube channel and also our live streams, which are a lot harder to get people to engage with initially than the short form content I was much more used to. So thank you everyone for that. And it's a nice little milestone for us. All right. And then also Angelina Tsabois, one of our part-time co-hosts, has released yet another tool. So this girl is busy. Like she is always working on aerospace hacking stuff. And she's co-hosted our stream a number of times now where she's answered questions and presented some of her drone hacking tools and satellite hacking tools. And on top of that, you guys helped us sell out her last class in Los Angeles where she was talking about satellite hacking with Python. So Angelina has done it again and made an awesome tool that allows you to get real-time forecasts, get satellite passes, and also decode satellite transmissions to turn them into images of the Earth that are taken very frequently. So if you want to get some of the fastest satellite imagery available, you can download the transmissions yourself and decode them and turn them into the images that are being transmitted. So very cool stuff. Angelina really excels at making this sort of thing useful and accessible for people who are just getting started. So I got to give her a shout out because it's super cool to see more of her satellite tracking, maybe not hacking in this case, tools coming out.
That's wild. That's really cool.
Right. I mean, Angelina loves hacking anything that flies. So it could be a satellite. I mean, I guess the satellite's more falling, but you get what, anything above ground level, Angelina is interested in hacking. So if you are interested in that stuff too, she's become a real expert in this sort of thing. And it's great to see her creating lots of cool stuff. And I have to give her a shout out also. She's going to be helping us put on our game that we're going to be doing at DEF CON, assuming everything works out. So Angelina's been working on a lot of stuff. Always love giving her shout outs, and I'll try to get her on the stream soon as well, maybe for our Q&A session, to see if you guys have any questions about her new satellite stuff.
I don't know, Kody. I'm going to put you on the spot, and I know you're not expecting this. Are we going to try and stream from Black Hat next week at all? I don't know. It's kind of a weird couple days that we're there, and I know you'll be there longer, but I don't know. Maybe
Yeah, I think
we'll see.
I'm gonna say yes. We managed to pull it off at RSA, and honestly, it was super fun. There are, as you were mentioning earlier, some more filming restrictions when it comes to
Yeah.
filming at like Black Hat than some of the other places we've been. But I anticipate we're gonna pull it off. At a minimum, I would love to do some like Q&A stuff and like talk about all the great things at the conference and do like a recap. So yeah, bring your questions about Black Hat. I think I pray not next week, but the week after, and we will be there to answer. Maybe go to some of the booths you guys mentioned, or attend some of the events. Like the Black Hat Arsenal is really the one that I'm interested in. Killian, do you remember what the Black Hat Arsenal is?
I didn't get to stop by last year when I was there. So I don't know what to expect this year, I suppose, or I don't know what's supposed to be featured there.
So Black Hat Arsenal is typically a list of all the really interesting offensive or generally offensive tools that have come
Yeah.
out. So it's like all the newest cyber weapons that have been developed by like open source people and put on display. So it's typically not like, the newest Microsoft product. It's going to be like
Right.
some like rude and dirty Python script that does something terrible, that are intriguing people enough for
Right.
it to be featured in the arsenal. So great, really great people like Patrick Wardle and others who also make defensive tools, have been included in Black Hat Arsenal, and I always look forward to it a lot. So if you guys have any questions about Black Hat, please let me know, because I would be happy to go to some of those booths and investigate them with you.
Well, you
Um,
sold me too, Kody. I'm gonna have to make sure I dedicate time to this because I'm always trying to see everything, and it's too big to see everything. So now I know where to go for sure.
yeah, I love it too because it's kind of self-service. Whereas like with most of the talks and stuff, you have to commit a certain
Hmm.
amount of time, or like be that
Right.
guy that like walks out in the middle of someone's talk, which is just like I hate to be that person. Um, but yeah, like when it comes to Black Hat Arsenal, you can just go walk up to any booth that you want, like watch the presentation, watch half the presentation, watch none of the
Yeah.
presentation if it looks boring, and just keep on trucking. So I like that a lot. And yes, James asks, is Patrick the Mac guy? Yes, Patrick is the ex NSA Mac OS focused security researcher who runs objectivec.com, SEE, like you're peeking into it. But he is fantastic. He does a lot of great defensive tools that I myself use for Mac OS. And having met him a number of times, he's just like a super cool guy. So he also has a security conference in Hawaii called Objective by the Sea. Although I think actually it was like located randomly like in Spain last time. But I definitely love, for one, the puns, and for two, the beach. So it's one of those security conferences I've really been wanting to go to. So yeah. Oh, also, someone in the chat says that Try Hack Me will be at Black Hat. That sounds super cool, especially if they have like a CTF or like a game to play. Like it's always fun to find these like popular training tools that end up coming to a conference and hopefully do something interesting for attendees. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the news. There's like kind of a lot, and we're already 20 minutes into our stream, so we might not even be able to get through it, but we're gonna try. Should I start from the beginning or the end? There's so much stuff. Let's start from the beginning. So this one's gonna be hopefully fairly short. This is
Yeah.
a new feature, which is kind of interesting to me. So what's the high
Yeah.
level of the story? Please pronounce this, Killian.
Alfie.
They've got a branding problem.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
So yeah, so this is a ransomware group that has become increasingly notorious for their double exploitation
Yep.
techniques. And what's notable here is that they are starting to try to make it easier and easier for other cyber criminals to use the data that they're breaching. So they're kind of creating like additional pressure on the people that they are doing ransomware attacks against by making it so that clear text web or clear web
Hmm.
websites are able to link to the data that they're putting out, like the breach data that
Right.
they're releasing, and use it for whatever kind of cybercrime those people are going to do. So initially, the documentation for this API that became available to basically like look for and connect to data breaches that they've published was restricted to a couple of users. It was like private and not fully like publicly
Mhm.
available. But it looks as though that now the lid has kind of been blown off of that, and people who want to can connect to this API and interrogate whether or not there is any new data
Yeah.
breaches or if there's any data to be scraped. So this obviously would be useful for cyber criminals who rely on the data that is breached by these companies to do their own scams. And it's interesting to see that one of the moves, and there have been a couple of moves that we'll report on, of these cybercrime gangs is to make it increasingly easy for people to abuse the data.
Yep.
Previously, like having to put something up on Tor, like that's great, but not everybody knows how to use Tor. And on top of
Hmm.
that, the speeds are super slow. So if you're downloading a giant data breach, it's pretty hard and pretty frustrating, and it might be limited to like some hackers, security researchers, and maybe a couple journalists. But those journalists have to be pretty technical, and this is making it
Hmm.
so that more people have access to these data breaches faster, which overall increases the damage and
Yep.
the immediacy of the threat against
Yeah.
victims who are contemplating as to whether or not it's going to be worth it to pay the ransom or not.
Yep.
So there's
Uh,
also a note that that ransomware victims who paid fell to a record low of 34% in the second quarter of this year. So that just means that some of these groups are probably starting to feel the squeeze of having,
mhm.
only like 30 something percent of their attacks end up yielding any real
Right.
money.
Yeah. I mean, law enforcement for years said don't pay, and um, the the attackers are just turning the screws even harder. I mean, again, getting that data out there, putting the pressure on even more. So, I mean, I'll quote James here in the chat too. It's a cool feature. Too bad it's for evil. Exactly.
Yeah, it's a cool feature, but unfortunately for an evil organization. So it kind of, in some ways, it's really interesting to see what's valuable enough to put development time and energy into as a
Right.
cybercrime group, right? Like you're paying a bunch of cyber criminal like programmers, like what are you going to spend their time on and what's actually worth it? I'm not saying these groups are like always smart. Sometimes they make mistakes, but really like they're starting to involve like smarter and smarter criminals who are
Hmm.
realizing how to make it so that the splash that these attacks cause is increased. So
Yep.
anytime you poke your head outside a Tor, like it always brings risk. Like if you're going to make something on the clear net, it's easier to take down. But we'll see more about that
Right.
in some other related stories. All right, so this is a pretty big breach. This is a U.S.
Big
government
one.
contract, Maximus, and this is a data breach again involving the MoveIt data transfer theft attacks. I'm not going to go too much into this, other than to say it is pretty standard for these MoveIt data theft attacks. They're typically done by CLOP. They're typically double exploitation attacks, and yep, CLOP behind the breach.
Yep.
And it's a pretty standard process at this point. I've mentioned time and time again over the last several weeks that like this ransomware gang is literally behind schedule on being able to go through all the data that it stole. They got
Yeah.
so much that organizing these campaigns has been, it seems, a logistics challenge for them. So the fact that they're just getting to some of these victims after, like publishing the data or setting up the infrastructure necessary to do the exploitation, this is just such a huge attack, and it's been so theoretically anyway, it's going to be so profitable for the attackers
Yeah.
because of the scope and scale. They're really investing a lot of resources into it, and they're taking their time rolling these out. So again, we're probably not, this is not the last CLOP data
No,
breach
absolutely not.
like notification we're going to get, because like frankly it's just huge and they're struggling to get through all the victims. All right, next up. This one is really cool slash
Yeah.
weird. Microsoft is previewing Defender for IoT firmware analysis, and I thought that like it was just gonna get, like maybe the firmware version of something, and then look up some details based
Right.
on an internal registry. And maybe I'm misinterpreting this, and that's actually what it does do, and it's a lot less powerful than Teams. But honestly, it sounds like what it's supposed to do is extract like a bin file or analyze the compiled binary of
Hmm.
IoT devices that are it's connected to or that are on the network, and be able to look at things like the open source libraries they have
Yeah.
included in them, and then go into those open source libraries and identify CVEs that are like critical, and be able to be like, oh, this software binary relies on this open source library that the version that it's included has like a hideous, remote access
Right.
vulnerability that could completely breach your network. That's crazy. Like that's
It's
actually
awesome.
like incredible to me, because it seems like quite complicated to be able to like extract binary
Hmm.
files from like all these IoT devices. Like how it actually works is again a little bit of a mystery to me. Even reading through this, I wasn't completely sure if it's like directly connecting to them and trying to pull the binary,
Right.
or again if it's maybe just getting like a checksum or something where it can check against a library of different like
Right.
binaries, and then I match it to that exact version. That would probably honestly be more efficient than trying to extract all these binary files from like devices that are connected and like doing whatever that process would be, because like
Right.
most IoT devices are not directly connected to your computer, they're connected over network. So again, trying to suss out the details of this is like a little bit confusing. But what is known is that there are some limitations on this. For example, it cannot analyze anything over 1 GB, and it has to be a
Yeah.
compiled Linux-based firmware image. Um, yes. Okay. Okay. So it's important to note that only compiled and unencrypted Linux-based firmware images obtained from your device's vendor can be
Mm.
analyzed using the Defender for IoT firmware analysis feature.
Oh,
Also, the image must not exceed 1 GB. Okay, so from that
maybe.
sentence,
Yeah, maybe
it
that
seemed
answers it.
it seems like you would need to obtain your own binary
Yep.
file through whatever means and then upload it to this tool, and then it would look, which honestly, I mean, that makes a lot more sense, but it
Right.
also is going to be a lot less useful, and it's not quite as automated as I was hoping. Because like again, IoT devices are typically like connected to your network, and
Mhm.
like getting the binary file or intercepting that binary file is not something that everybody knows how to do, because most of these have apps or other things that do that automatically, the update process. So is this going to be super useful for security nerds? Yes. You want to
Yeah.
like be able to objectively hack your IoT device. This actually seems like the first thing
Mhm.
that you would want to do, right? Like obtain, like dump the binary file, put it through this, and then see if there's any open source libraries with proof of concepts that are vulnerable.
Yeah.
Like, so for security researchers, this actually sounds super useful. For the average user, I think it's going to be a little bit more than they're willing to do, but I think it's a really good
Mhm.
start, because this is an amazing target for further security, like just posture, just making sure that IoT devices aren't easily exploitable on a network from something that is, already known to everyone.
Or I mean, even we can flip it the other way. We can almost think of this as the cheap code analysis. You know what I mean? If you're developing something like this, for startups or smaller IoT vendors, run your firmware through this, like Microsoft do the check instead of investing in the code analysis and whatnot. At least it'll get you something, so you're not releasing the hideously flawed versions of some of these things that we've seen, where the communication is unencrypted and unauthenticated and everything else.
Yeah, so some great questions in the chat as well. One of them was about the previous story we were talking about. And the question was, do you think the shift in the economy produces more ransomware attacks? Um, I would say it probably makes ransomware attacks less profitable. If the company is making money and times
Right.
are good, and a ransomware attack comes along and you have the budget to deal with it, and like it's a critical system, so you have to get it online, and the ransom isn't unreasonable because they know how much money you have, so they ask for something reasonable. Like the odds are, like a lot of people are going to pay it. Like the reputational risk isn't worth it. Times are good, the money will be back soon. But when times are hard and
Hmm.
companies aren't making as much money, and it really isn't that critical of a system, or the data like affects just employees and it doesn't impact the business's ability to do work, that's where you start to see this like 35% statistic starting to make more sense, where like most companies are going to look at it and be like, wow, someone's getting free credit monitoring, that sucks.
Hmm.
If it doesn't actually impact like the current, now critical infrastructure things where like people can't do anything until the situation is resolved, that's different. Those
Right.
attacks I think are going to continue to be successful. But for businesses that are doing reputational management stuff, like the numbers have probably changed a little bit, at least in my
Hmm.
opinion, just based on harder times and less of a knowledge of where you're going to replace that money you just sent to a bunch of Bitcoin people.
Right.
James also mentions that those of us using Home Assistant or open source software can do this automatically. Yes, and another thing I was saying, and I'm not sure if this is a response to this question, but theoretically anyway, if you were able to do like a scan of different devices, and part of that scan was like a firmware version with like a checksum or like something
Yeah.
that you could use to identify the exact firmware version. Theoretically anyway, Microsoft could just go and take these devices, dump that binary for each one of these manufacturers that they want to support, and have a library of that, so that that
Hmm.
firmware number already links back to an analysis that Microsoft did, and you require a lot less scanning and dumping
Yeah.
and all that. I, if somebody's going to build that product, you now owe me money, because I just came up with it right here on the screen. But anyway, I'm just saying it would involve a lot of like collecting of like old IoT devices and getting the
Hmm.
firmware from the manufacturers and partnerships and stuff. So it seems like a pretty huge project, and this is still a really good start for being able to just take devices where you do have access to the firmware, dump them, and see if there's anything going on there. But again, it seems like more of a security researcher kind of thing, and
Right.
less of a end consumer kind of thing. All right. Twitter rebranded to look like a crypto phishing site today, and now or yesterday, I guess, and also triggered a security alert. So not just in
Hmm.
my own brain, but also in Microsoft Edge. So this is a feature that's designed to protect against websites that have been taken over, or like phishing pages that have recently
Yeah,
rebranded to look like a phishing page, to look like an official website. And it
right.
warns users if the certain key details affecting the appearance of the website have been rapidly changed. So users that were attempting to navigate to Twitter were instead redirected to X and got a security alert for the icon, and had to okay whether or not they wanted to install it.
Hmm.
So this is progressive web apps. It's a built-in feature of Chromium, which like not all browsers, but a lot of browsers are based on
Yeah.
nowadays. So this is going to affect like any Chromium-based browser, which is a lot of them. So if you did see this alert, it is funny, but not actually a
Mhm.
valid. Well, it remains to be seen whether it is a
Sure.
valid security alert. But still kind of funny as a result of this rapid
Hmm.
switch of brands. Ugh, yuck! I see it in the tabs. I just want to close out of it. All right. So this is okay. So I don't have you ever heard of IDOR, aka indirect say insecure oh my gosh. Insecure direct object reference?
Yeah, it comes up from time to time. I think basically, I that the definition is probably in here, but I think basically it means that you can like reference an object that you're not supposed to, like a file or a database or something, and not not maybe bypass the authentication or something that you shouldn't have direct access to. I guess I mean that's the direct access part. Like if you're supposed to be going through a front end or something, but you can reference a file living there. I think that's more or
Yeah.
less what it is.
Yeah,
Um,
that is my understanding as well. It seems like oh, and apparently Z also knows of IDORs, but IDORs appear to be the ability to directly reference an object that you're not supposed to.
right.
Um,
Yeah.
so the other kind of part of that is that typically these sorts of attacks will allow you to potentially change configuration settings or like
Hmm.
make other changes. So not only can you access the objects that are supposed to be internal or require authentication to access, you can also potentially change them. And there
Yeah.
have been a number of different attacks or breaches that have concerned this, that have now made it a priority for the government to try to get developers and people that are involved in the creation of apps to take this threat more seriously. So making sure that people are aware that this is a very commonly exploited vulnerability. It has really severe repercussions, and really the only defense against this is to make it so that people who are building these sorts of applications are planning for it.
Yeah.
Um, so they're calling for vendors, designers, developers, and organizations that use web applications to start taking this threat more seriously. They went ahead and released some best practices for like the correct way to do this. And,
Hmm.
instead of just yelling about like all the stuff to be scared of, they did try to give all of these different shareholders like a little bit more information about how these attacks impact them and the correct way to mitigate them. But yeah, this is something that is becoming more and more common. And once you see, federal agencies reaching out and starting to talk about this in the marketplace, like, listen, this has become a security nightmare for us. More people need to be aware of this. This is something where like they're kind of almost like hinting that
Hmm.
like, this is going to become like
Right.
part of the bar to make sure that your secure whatever is actually secure. It's good to start listening to them. Yes, secure by design and default principles. Yes. All right. Next up. So this is a little bit. I guess I just like had kind of forgot this is a capability. Have you
Hmm.
ever had an application like when you're setting your icon or something
Hmm.
request access to your like camera or like
Yeah.
database or your camera folder? It's a
Right.
pretty like standard permission that you might need to go through and select an image. But it seems as though sorry, I just noticed this document. Um, but this one was actually detected doing optical character recognition. So
Hmm.
the thought here is that this would actually go through your photos and try to find out if you've taken a picture of something like a high entropy string, indicating like a
Hmm.
Bitcoin address or like something that would be worth stealing, and then
Right.
attempt to exfiltrate that information. So optical character recognition, obviously that's when you go through a bunch of photos, you try to identify text. It's something like Google Lens or whatever. But the
Yeah.
fact that this, so I would consider to be like somewhat advanced feature,
Mhm.
is actually being used to mine for high entropy strings. It's almost like people have realized that humans store data in all sorts of places, and like
Yeah.
images are just a way that people will often take a picture of notes or
Mhm.
sensitive information they need to reference later. So usually, that's not stored in text. You would have to exfiltrate those files themselves, but being able to
Right.
scan those photos and extract text-based information allows for much, yeah, I would say, more elegant attacks where you're just exfiltrating the stuff you want, and you're
Mhm.
you know you're leaving the photo, and you're not actually attempting to like copy like large images
Right.
or anything like that. So if you're a big fan of Happy Miner, GP Talk, or Robot 999, these are some of the primary malicious websites that these APKs have been distributed from. A couple of them made it to the Google Play Store, but they were removed. So it's more if you are like on social media, you'll see these like branded videos that are like telling you to download this thing. Sometimes they'll be advertised or sponsored, and then you'll get an invitation code. Now, this is another cool thing or interesting thing about this threat actor is that they require an invitation code from one of their social media campaigns, which is often direct messaged. So what that means is, as a security researcher, I have a lot less information about what this malware is doing because
Mhm.
I can't just download the APK.
Right.
Like I have to get invited. And it's funny because like they actually vet their targets, and they have like a human element going here, like talking to the targets and like making sure that they are someone they want to try infecting before they'll give you that code. So
Right.
interesting to see some of these like almost old school methods for restricting the ability of researchers to analyze the way that this infection works. All right, so Hawaii Community College has admitted to paying a ransomware gang to prevent a data leak. Now, it seems like, as I mentioned before, like it really depends on what's going on, like with the economy, what's going on with the
Mhm.
budget, and what kind of data has been stolen when making this sort of decision. So I can't really. I guess the point is to not know what kind of
Right.
data was involved here. It seems like whatever it was serious enough that they did say that they paid to prevent that data from being deleted, from being released and to have it deleted. And it seems also that a number of different cybersecurity firms reached out and attempted to like negotiate on their behalf.
Yeah.
Um, what Yeah, so what I don't understand is like how you could possibly verify that like
Right.
data was deleted. But yeah, they say that working with an external team of cybersecurity experts, they reached an agreement with the threat actors to destroy all the information it illegally obtained. Again, how
Right.
they deleted this no escape data that was exfiltrated, I don't know. But seems like they are still yeah, it's like they're still trying to get their IT infrastructure up and running. It's not known what kind of data was stolen, and hopefully it continues to not be known. But this does not always go well for victims who pay. Often they
Right.
will find out that the threat actors get cash strapped later and turn back to the data that they
Mhm.
already have and sell it on the darknet to facilitate cybercrime
Right.
and other malicious activities to make an extra buck. So, anytime a cybercrime group has a valuable asset like a bunch of personal data, like even if you pay them not to use it immediately, it's doubtful that they would just delete the information they just tried to like
Right.
obtain so hard. So I guess we'll see what happens. It just makes me nervous because there's just no way to verify that
Yeah.
data that's
You
been
can know.
exfiltrated is ever deleted.
Mhm.
All right, so now we have our. I should just make a North Korea section because
Right.
Lazarus has been busy the
Yeah.
last couple months. So they have been linked to a number of cryptocurrency heists, and I will say one thing: North Korean hackers are crazy for cryptocurrency. They love it, and they've been particularly going after payment gateways and other people
Mhm.
involved in the transfer of cryptocurrency. So this was attributed to North Korea by blockchain analysis, and it was a attack for $6 worth of cryptocurrency. And this is just what they do. They're just
Yeah.
highly skilled at doing social engineering attacks that are typically like a wild job offer or like
Mhm.
something that's like very, very tempting for the
Yep.
victims of like one of these companies to click on. And once they do, they get infected, and they're relatively sophisticated and highly knowledgeable about the way like these digital currencies work and how to launder them and how to very quickly
Mhm.
get the coins out. So yeah, they typically lure employees with fake job offers, and get them to open infected files. And that's the infection
Yeah,
vector for virtually all of these. So they're heavily invested in reconnaissance and social engineering as their primary method of attack.
it's effective. I mean, I think I want to say we have one or two, maybe even three stories on these guys doing something similar, and that's just
Yeah.
what in the last week or two.
Yep. That's they are incredibly active, which
Mhm.
is let's move on to the next story. So next up, CoinsPaid is blaming Lazarus hackers for a theft of $37 million worth of cryptocurrency. This article is a little strange in that the company is so upbeat. They're like, "Yeah, it's no big deal. You know, they
Yeah,
didn't get that much. Like, well, it'll be back in the bank tomorrow." So the company claims that there's no impact on their business, that this is all kind of water under the bridge, and that they'll be fine. And the coins from this attack were observed moving through a number of different Bitcoin tumblers that North Korea has used before. So it
Mhm.
seems, just because this seems very, very related to the previous attack on the other coining company, that yeah, this is almost definitely related to North Korea. So, statement by the company: "We have no doubt the hackers won't escape justice." That's a little bit of a double negative, but I understand what they're saying there. But yeah, it seems like North Korea has gotten exceedingly skilled at
Yeah,
attacking these sorts of like coin like transfer companies that like stand in the middle between like exchanges,
yeah.
and they're making a lot of money off of it. So that's what like so 60 million on the last one plus another 37 million. That's like it's getting close to $100 million in
A lot
crypto
of money.
coins. Yeah, that's absolutely wild. It's a lot of fake money, but people believe in it, and that's really all that matters in capitalism. So, like I guess it is real money if that's
Right.
the case. But almost $100 million in like untraceable money, or not untraceable, but somewhat traceable money,
Yeah.
useful money for a country under embargo, is a pretty big deal. And the fact that
Right.
North Korea has dedicated so much of their state-backed operations to crypto exchanges and firms like this that have direct access to these sorts of usable funds, I mean, obviously, whatever investment they put into this group is probably
Yeah.
less than $100 million. But who knows? Who knows? Um, all right. So next up, this is a little bit ironic. So you can now, for $100,000, buy the breach form database and comb
Mhm.
through all the hacker private DMs like that were going between people. So this can expose information about who was using it, their purchases, and other activity about people on the website. And a lot of people are interested in this
Yeah.
sort of data. Um, so a lot of cybersecurity companies would love to get their eyes on like, specific wallets and some other
Mhm.
enriched data like for products, or to figure out like who was behind certain attacks, or like who did what on this website. So if you don't have $100,000, then it's kind of thought you could also probably just wait, because in true tradition of like breach forms, like typically people will like sell a breach for a certain amount of
Yeah.
money, and then as soon as somebody buys it, they'll be like, "Yeah, I'm just going to share it with everyone else." That's
Right.
just kind of the culture there. So you can
My
probably anticipate this data leaking at some point in the near future as well.
my favorite statement is a little bit up from where it was. One of the admins was like, "Oh, this is a continued effort to destroy the community." Like I,
Um,
that rings a little bit hollow considering what y'all do. I'm just saying. Like you can't get mad about someone selling your stolen data when you sell stolen data. I don't know.
yeah, Yeah, like if this is an okay thing to do and
Right.
build a community around, you have to expect that at some point the community might fall victim to its own activities.
Yeah.
Like so. Again, like a little bit ironic that
Yes.
but most of the people who frequented this forum and were like more, I would say, advanced users, were always telling others on this forum, "Hey, you should never assume that this is
Right.
private. You should
Mhm.
never assume that like nobody will see this. Like you have to assume like enough OPSEC that if these
Yeah.
messages were intercepted, it wouldn't matter to you." So anybody that did that, is in the clear. But anybody that got sloppy, used their real IP address, or linked other pieces of their data to their account, is probably sweating a little bit right now.
Mhm.
All right, so this is a large impact business, and again, this is an IT incident. And this early into like a breach or something, we really don't know what an IT incident means. It could be an extortion attack, it could be a
Mhm.
ransomware attack. We really don't know. It hasn't been designated an encryption event yet, so
Right.
that at least is good. But the impact of this is that all tourist and transit visas into Sweden from the UK are now canceled. So that is because a single company was the point of contact for anybody who wanted to get one of these visas, and now they've been hit by some sort of attack that has impacted their
Yeah.
ability to take new applications and process them. So this is going to be one of those critical infrastructure things that have a lot of pressure behind resolving whatever this incident is, because a lot of people are probably going to have their
Hmm.
travel impacted, and it could also impact the other things like business and like government movement. So yeah,
Yeah.
altogether like a pretty notable or at least very obvious attack, just because of the number of people that it's impacting with their inability to now move to get into another country. All right, so no further details on this yet, but we'll probably
Yeah.
check in next week. So this is interesting. So any company that
Hmm.
is now publicly traded is required to disclose a cyber attack within 4 days. I actually really like this rule. I think
Yeah.
it's extremely reasonable, and it is, it's not 4 days from when the attack happens. It's 4 days from when like the scope of the attack is revealed, or like
Right.
when they like find out exactly like what's going on. So there's a lot
Hmm.
of instances where companies will find out exactly what's going on, and then they will delay or sugarcoat or
Yeah.
like use excuses up until like the last possible minute that they've got like PR people fully involved, and the whole thing's been like
Right.
basically wrapped up with a bow and made to look a lot less terrible than it is. Unfortunately, that's pretty deceptive to investors
Yeah.
and other people that are trying to know like relatively what's going on in the business, but are denied the opportunity to have awareness into like what's happening, because there's just no incentive to share these breaches. So
Right.
it's now becoming a rule that this has to happen. And there are some exceptions though. So if it poses like a substantial national security issue, or like there's some other stuff, like then you can potentially hold this back for longer. And smaller companies are granted an additional 180 days before they are also required to do disclosures. But larger companies still have to do this. See, reporting feature within. Oh yeah, so this takes effect 30 days after being published in the Federal Registrar. So the design here is to increase transparency. We make sure that like people know when there's been a breach,
Hmm.
and the information included in the filing form is the date of discovery and the status of the incident, ongoing or resolved, a concise description of the incident's nature and extent, any data that might have been compromised, altered, accessed, or used without
Yeah.
authorization.
Huge.
That's really important, because like people will tap dance all day to get
Yep.
around explicitly saying this. And then the impact of
Exactly.
the incident on the company's operations. That's going to be, is it a shutdown? Is it an
Hmm.
inconvenience? Are we talking about a standstill? And then finally, information about the ongoing or completed remediations by the company. So, like, what exactly have they done to fix this?
Hmm.
Have they had one big meeting, or have they hired a
Right.
vendor? Like, what exactly has been done to prevent this from getting worse, or to make sure that this has been resolved to the satisfaction of the people who are the company's ultimately responsible for? Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
The
that's about
interesting
it.
thing though is, from an investor standpoint, I mean, it's a really interesting way to attack this type of problem, because you think about like, if an organization has a breach, you're a public company, your intellectual property, your trade secrets go out the door, like that could materially impact the business if a competitor now has all of your book of business or all of your customers, or anything like that. Not even just traditional sensitive data that we talk about, your credit cards, your PII. Like, this is really kind of going the heart of what's business critical. So, as an informed investor, you want to know, like, hey, if I put money with this company, oh wait, their competitive advantage is just evaporated. Like, am I going to lose my shirt on it? It's pretty important, and it's kind of I think, a pretty smart backdoor way to tackle some of the resistance to kind of a more universal security framework or law, like a USA GDPR or something like that.
Yeah. So a couple of comments in the chat. One is James is mentioning that I think Troy Hunt said he was adding breach form data to Have I Been Pwned. And yes,
Hmm.
I also heard this. So it seems as though Have I Been Pwned will get an update with all the data from breach forms, where people will be able to verify whether or not their information has been breached in that. Pretty cool to be a guy that gets a
Hmm.
$100,000 breach
Yeah.
database for free. Uh, Also, what's up, TJ Green? Hello, I see you in the chat. All right, so we're gonna speed run through a couple of these other ones just because like we've
Cool.
got like 7 more stories and like 7 minutes, but it doesn't really matter. So this is NATO investigating a alleged data theft by SiegeSec, and this appears to be at least like it seems to be anyway on its surface related to complaints about human rights
Uh-huh.
issues amongst like NATO members. It claims to be unrelated to the war in Ukraine, but like that's exactly what I would say if I was somebody that was doing it
Right.
exclusively because of the war in Ukraine. So the information that is leaked by is an unclassified system used to promote cooperation between NATO members.
Mhm.
It doesn't process classified information, but it does have sensitive information about the people who use
Sure.
it. So that's going to be the full name of the person, the company slash unit, the working group, the job title, the business email ID, residence address, and a photograph of that person. So
Mm.
for deep fakes, for phishing, that's a lot of information
Yeah.
that could potentially come back to bite people. So yeah, that sort of biometric information, the ability to like, like identify where someone lives, how to contact them, like that is going to be awesome for any hacker that's looking to reach out to sensitive NATO individuals. So
Right.
knowing what their rank is, what their position is, means that it's kind of exposed like the inner workings of these groups and given attackers a window into who they would need to contact in order to affect a pretty large data breach.
Yep.
All right, next up, we got night malware pushed by Google Ads. I hate this. Can I just say it's so annoying to me that I will still type in, a search request for
Right.
a common type of software, and I will get these malware campaigns that
Mhm.
appear at the top of Google and Bing and
Right.
DuckDuckGo ads. It is so annoying. So this is what happens. You'll do a search for a type of software. This is going to be AnyDesk, Cisco AnyConnect VPN, Tree Size Free, and Windows SCP. So we take this data, we take this, and then we do a search for it. And what ends up happening? Well, we get like the stuff that you would expect, but then we also get like these random other websites that are offering the software, like TechSpot. I don't know if this is a
Mhm.
legitimate website, but these are the kinds of things I'm talking about. Where like once you
Right.
get past, like often you'll see something up here, like an ad that's like
Yeah.
like seems to be an okay vendor to go with, but it's just a phishing site and it's promoted by like paid ads or ad credits. So like you'll sign up
Mhm.
for an account and it'll give you a certain amount of ad credits for free. And then the threat actors will immediately use those ad credits to push like a fake download website. So again, not saying that one is like malicious itself, but that's the kind of website
Right.
that would be promoted at the top. You're like, oh, a convenient way to download it. And you would go to some
Mhm.
third party website. I love also that it has like reviews with like 5 stars or whatever to like increase your confidence. It has all the hallmarks of like
Mhm.
a peer reviewed website, but that actually
Right.
raises huge red flags for me. Like unknown random like software marketplaces that like have like
Mhm.
stuff you can download from the original website, like with like a big like
Right.
5 star review. That to me means I'm gonna get infected. So
Yeah.
just be very critical of those sorts of things because that's exactly what is being used to push this nitrogen malware campaign. And these are the primary like types of software they were going after, and this is going to be like primarily targeting like North American businesses
Yeah.
with this attack. Yeah, yuck. See,
Oh, there it is.
is what I'm talking about. Yeah, secure file transfer for Windows SCP. This is also me. If you access it through the ad campaign, then it will give you the phishing site. But if you try
Right.
to go to the domain directly, it slams the door on you and sends you over to a Rickroll, which is something I would do. Like it just
Sure.
again, we've seen a couple different ways of hackers trying to prevent security researchers from examining their infrastructure,
Mhm.
and this is just another way of doing it, where it requires to be clicked on through the ad campaign in order
Yeah.
to actually see the malicious component. I've done some reporting and research on this where I get so annoyed where I'll get served like sometimes I'll get like sent like a text where if I like click on it and it sees a mobile device, it will allow me to proceed to the phishing page. But
Right.
if it sees like a desktop device or like any sort of other user agent, it'll send me
Mhm.
to like an innocuous random website. I was like, it's
Right.
fascinating to see how this works, and trying to take it
Mhm.
apart in like OWASP Zap to see how it works is actually super frustrating.
Oh, here, there's a good comment. Not before we get too far off. TJ Green said, "Is the MoveIt exploit still active?" The That's one worth answering. They did issue a patch. Actually, they've issued several patches for a couple of them. So if you know anybody who has MoveIt, probably advise them to patch if they haven't already, because Flop is not gonna not take advantage, even though they have more more data to go through than they could possibly ever have dreamed of.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say like it's only over in that like the easiest targets have been exploited, and now like anyone that's still connected with like a vulnerable server is probably going to have been hit like multiple times by now
Yeah.
because it's just not just one ransomware group. It's like anyone with the capability.
Yep.
All right, so we'll go through this briefly. Google Chrome is offering link preview. So if you hover your mouse over a link, it's proposing to pop open a little preview. How exactly that works, I don't really know. Because if that your user agent over to that website and like pulls a version of it, like I actually don't like that because for privacy reasons, you could like grab
Yeah.
information about people who just hover over a link instead of even clicking on it. I think the deliberate act of clicking on a link is like, like kind of like a red line for me as where I
Yeah.
don't want that website I don't want to send that website any information until I decide I want to navigate to it. So like I
Right.
actually like don't like this feature at all. Some people probably will. I can see why it might be useful sometimes, but as somebody who plays with tracking tools, like this is exactly the kind of thing that typically will
Right.
leak privacy where like for example, I'll make a canary token and then I will give it to someone and be like, share this in a private chat, like at a certain point and I'll just wait. And then none of them will click on it. They'll share it in a private chat, but I'll get a bunch of hits from, for example, like the Signal, like bot, or like whatever other bot, or like the Microsoft Teams bot that goes out
Yeah.
and fetches a preview and comes back. So I actually
Yep.
know if I give an individual person a special link, I know when that person has shared that link in a public place, and I know what public place they've shared it in. So if that's the kind of information I can already get from somebody just dropping a particular link in a chat that offers the ability to preview links, like imagine if the whole internet was doing that,
Right.
every time you mouse over something. Like, no, I hate it. So you can disable this, and I don't like it, but other people might. It's exploring with the new design in Chrome, and it's rolling out to users, but I hope it doesn't roll out to me because I don't want it. All right, so this is Realist ST, macOS malware that is designed to steal Bitcoin wallets. Pretty common target. I wonder who could be behind it.
Yeah. Right.
But fairly sophisticated, and being spread in the form of blockchain games. So this is going to be Brawl Earth, Wild World, Dawnland, Destruction, Avalon, Pearl, Olymp of Reptiles, which I am now intrigued by. And Saint Legend. Just in case Olymp of Reptiles is not safe for work for whatever reason, I'm not going to click on it.
Yeah. Maybe.
These seem like the sorts of weird blockchain games that like crypto people like. Sorry, no offense, I'm sure they're great, especially the Reptiles one. That one does sound great. But these are games that once downloaded, and often they're promoted on social media. Seeing one of those strategies we've seen before of social proof, and like seeing it on like TikTok or something. People will download it, try it out, and of course there's all those like comments on it, usually from other like bots being like, "Wow, this game's amazing! I can't stop playing. I'm addicted."
Yeah.
Whatever. And this is pretty. Oh,
There it is.
image. Olymp of Reptiles. They're pretty. They look mostly normal. NFT, a card game set in the mesmerizing world of reptiles. So this is just hacking you, by the way. This is just stealing all of your cryptocurrency. These reptiles are robbing you.
Yes.
So just kind of notable that this is fairly sophisticated macOS malware that is targeted at upcoming releases of macOS. So the game.py file is actually just a cross-platform Firefox info stealer. And there's another chain breaker vulnerability in here designed to be able to dump all the credentials that you have in your keychain access. And then there's also another like terminal-based one that pops in a terminal window and tries to get you to type in your password, so it can just like dump everything. So fairly sophisticated. Watch out for these like crypto games. Like they are very, very easy targets because people interested in crypto generally have cryptocurrency. So,
Yep.
Pick your targets, I guess. So this is a upgrade of Puppy. If you don't know what Puppy is, it is an intrusion tool written in Python that's been around for a good amount of time. This is an upgraded version that has been seen in the wild using DNS to do all of its sneaky like C2 server stuff.
Yeah.
And this report is so vague. Like it is observed in limited with Russian and Eastern European spaces, appears to be related to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. So it's not like totally like, is it the Americans? Is it like the attribution here is not clear. It's never stated like who they think it is, just that it's in relation to the invasion of Ukraine. So what that means, it's up to you. So not going to go too much into this one. Just interesting to see that puppy, cute little puppy, which again was an intrusion system. It was like used to attack a cross-platform computer. So Mac OS, like Windows, Linux, like puppy, like had something for it all. So seeing it evolve into whatever the hell this thing is. See, they're finally using Bing image. So I just want to mark this as the moment that, like, in my professional career, this is the first time I've acknowledgedly seen like an AI generated image as like the news headline. So we're now officially living in an AI nightmare.
We've crossed over, yeah.
Yeah, so that's actually incredible. I want you to all note on your calendar that today was the day you read your first news article with like a cited AI generated image. All right, next up.
I was going to say, just on the DNS one quickly, it's an interesting one too, and I won't spend much time on it. Just how little people think about DNS and just sort of let it go out, even especially in the corporate world, and how I mean, it's everywhere. You can't really do much with it. Like, there are some tools focused around it, but it is such a unique way to do C2 or even data exfiltration if you wanted to. I just find it fascinating to see that, like, we have news articles about it because we've been talking about it for a while, and it's interesting that maybe it's becoming a little bit more mainstream.
Yeah, it certainly seems like it. It just seems like something that not enough people are really looking for to be like the first thing that organizations will detect. All right, so now how about a 3-part series? Norway. Do you know how this company's name is pronounced? Avanti. I'll go with that.
Yeah, go with that.
Norway is saying that they had a major breach of like 12 government ministries because of an Avanti 0-day, which was used to hack their government IT systems. This is like, I believe it's like their Iron Core or something, like
Endpoint Mobile Manager.
Yeah, that's its new name. I guess it used to be like Iron Core. So throughout these 3 stories, we'll see like it referred to as both. But the Norwegian Security and Service Organization did not apparently affect some important agencies like the Norway's Prime Minister's Office, the Ministry of Defense, the Ministry of Justice, or the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. But they did notify the Data Protection Authority about the incident, which means that it was probably gaining access to or exfiltrating sensitive information from compromised systems, aka a data breach. So the fact that Norway was exploited by this went on to basically warn everybody else in the world who is using this this system that there is active exploitation. It is only a matter of time before this becomes more widespread. And a lot of the targets are also in the United States.
Yeah.
So moving on to yes, that's not. Oh yeah, Mobile Iron.
Yeah, that's
portals. I guess that's like the previous name of it. So we can see here that like a lot of the potentially systems are in the United Kingdom, in Central Europe, and then also in the United States. So that led to CISA getting in on the action and ordering agencies to patch this bug. Probably because it's under active exploitation, and another government was already breached by it.
Yep.
So yes, this is something that apparently organizations affected have until I believe the 15th of next month to take action, which in my mind is far too late. But I think it's the minimum that they're allowed to set here, where like it's just like trying to be reasonable. But like they're warning agencies and customers to immediately take action to make sure their systems are fully protected. This is something that obviously, if you're a government agency using this, like you're gonna wanna take care of this. There's 2,900 Mobile Iron user portals. Same graphic, you can see where they're distributed. Yes, they have to have these patched by August 15th because this is a big, bad, and very unfortunate, and also highly exploitable vulnerability. And then finally, the resolution to the story. Money patches the Mobile Iron 0-day bug, exploiting an attack. I don't believe that this was pushed out automatically, so I think that people still, yes, they need to upgrade to this version, and that requires some manual to do. They also target unsupported and end-of-life versions lower than okay, well that sucks. So yeah, it seems like this attack is very much in the early like disclosure phases. Like I'm sure that there are a lot of frantic like private communication prior to this, and that they're going public. I have been seeing some hackers on Twitter being like, y'all should go to the Avanti customer support portal right now and like read what people are saying. Nobody was posting it directly on Twitter for the last couple of days, but I knew something was up because like a bunch of people in the know were like, hey, wouldn't it be weird if you like checked out this customer support portal and like saw like what people were saying? So like, I feel like they're like, the other thing that was kind of crazy about this was that people who were invited to learn more about this vulnerability were asked to sign non-disclosure agreements. So that significantly slowed down some of the technical details and the indicators of compromise here. Like, because this was like truly like a national security incident, like there's evidence of like government compromise. This affects lots of different government agencies. Like I'm sure a lot about behind the scenes stuff. So that's why there was kind of this trickle of information in the hacker community. Like we all knew something was up, but like nobody that was in the know was like strictly allowed to talk about it. They could only like hint that like, oh, this is really bad. But hey, a patch is out, so the end is in sight, and again, it's just like a pretty remarkable attack. Yes. So you can see some hackers on Twitter have also been putting out, actually that's Mastodon, have been putting out more information about this as it goes on. So keep your eye on this. It is something that is attracting like multiple governments' attention, and it is something that will continue to probably be in the news until these patches are resolved because highly sensitive organizations and a very severe vulnerability. All right, now to a fun one, and probably the last one we'll do today. This is the new App Store by Flipper Zero. So previously, there have been some kind of like clunky features built into Flipper Zero. And if you don't know what a flipper is, I was playing with it at our company event. A lot of people thought it was very cool. It's a little like multi-tool hacker device that allows you to interact with authentication systems. So that could be like a TV remote control. It could be like an ID card, like scanner ID card. It could be sub-gigahertz radio. It basically tries to give you like as much of an ability to play with these systems and learn about them as possible. So one of the things that it was able to do, for example, was if you went up to like a door reader and press the flipper against it, you could get the keys necessary to read like door access tokens. So if you don't have that key, you can try to brute force it, but it takes forever and it doesn't work really well. So previously you'd have to do that, and then you connect the flipper to the app, and then it would like have to go to like a special section, and it would send over the keys, brute force them on your phone, send them back. It worked, but it was a little bit clunky, and like knowing where these extra features were and how they work was kind of not great. Now it seems like Flipper has added an app store that has a bunch of different mobile applications. So you can see, here we go. You can see all the different ones that, Pokemon trading. You can see all the different, oh, cool, they're doing a nested attack. Like, yeah, so like, I haven't even gone through all of these, like people have developed applications that can be downloaded and run through the App Store. And to me, this is kind of the final evolution of how to distribute these interesting projects to people in a way that makes sense and is fun, like making it so that developers can push their updates to people, and that they're directly empowering like the power users of Flipper to make more useful applications and share them. That's kind of like the final thing, because a lot of people would like get like unlocked versions or like versions of Flipper that were like forked versions of the firmware that had extra stuff, but most of that stuff was fluff. It was very low quality, kind of reminded me of the early days of like Cydia or something like that, maybe. So yeah, overall, it's been pretty cool to see the evolution of this product, like begin to incorporate, third-party apps or other apps in like an app store kind of setting where you can see all the stuff that's available and easily decide on what you want to use.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, I think that's just about all we have today, which is great timing because my headphones just died. Or at least I can still hear you in this ear, but not that one. But yeah, so that's all we got for today's news. If you haven't joined already, make sure to check out the Discord server, which is going to be I'll type it in. It's Nugget, NUGGET.LOL in the chat. And stay tuned on Wednesday for our next Q&A session. I think I'll try to get Angelina to come in and talk about all of her cool aerospace hacking stuff, but we will take your questions live. And if you leave any questions on the Discord under the live chat section or under the Q&A section, I will make sure to prioritize those and get them answered first. And as always, a big shout out to Varonis for not only letting me use this like sweet office, but also for supporting the stream, for letting us do this awesome and useful stream twice a week, every week, and also supporting us going to security conferences. So when you see me at Black Hat and DEF CON, the reason is because Varonis feels free to send me there. So if you want to support the stream, you can always go to varonis.com/Kody. That's Kody. And they do check to see how many people click that link. So if you want to support us, it's an easy and free way to do that, to let them know that you like the stream and you want it to keep going. Kilian, thank you for joining us on this fine Friday. Hope you have a good weekend. And
you too.
Yeah, we'll see all of you next time.
Take care.